All right, welcome back to Conscious Construction, the Conscious Enneagram podcast. I'm Abby Robbins, and today I am joined by my good friend Matt Inman.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So this whole season, we're talking about the Enneagram and spirituality. And I like to just start off with the huge, hard, stupid question of, what is spirituality to you?
Yeah. Just no warm-ups.
No, just like,
go into
why not? Let's just go.
Why are we here?
Yeah. Why do we exist, Matt?
do we
Tell us.
It's funny. I know that was kind of in the like, how would you define?
Yeah.
And I was laughing because as a 9 on the Enneagram, like, I feel like there's these two tracks of like, one, I'm sleepwalking and just like trying to survive the moment until I don't have anything to do and I can like relax. And it's constricted and,
it feels
protected
tense.
And tense. And that part of me is like, I grew up in the church. I've gone to seminary. I've worked in churches.
Yeah.
And I've never tried to define spirituality.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like where were you this whole time in your adult life? Like, so there's that.
Damn, that is like, wow.
Yeah.
Like, are you being serious right now? Like,
I'm
you've never.
totally being serious.
Okay.
No one's asked me to define it either.
So like when I sent you this email like 2 weeks ago,
Yeah.
it was like the first, oh shit. Okay.
Yeah. No
All
one.
right.
Yeah.
How did you get through seminary without anybody asking you that question?
I was asked a bajillion questions about like, how are you saved? How are you this?
Wow.
But it was never, what does this mean to you? Because that was an irrelevant question back then. That was an internal question, not like, that's not where you go.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Right. And so that was like that's, we go right. You don't go left there. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So there's that track,
damn.
but there's this other track that I feel like as a 9, like deeply aware and honor like the profundity of life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And feel the interconnectedness with like everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would you want to try to put words on that? You know what I mean? Like, and both of those exist at the same time in me.
So what I'm hearing is there's a lot of resistance to this question.
Yes. But I did sit down and try to define it.
Okay. Well, I mean, where did you get to in this?
So this is my definition.
Okay. All right. Let's hear it.
And it is deeply flawed and incomplete. But
as every definition of spirituality will be.
It is the experience.
Okay.
Which is a lot for me because it's so much of it's been belief or realization or whatever.
Yeah.
The experience of the emerging and animating and often cyclical force.
Okay.
But in and between all things.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Like part of me is glad that you waited this long because
it would have been.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Like, hell yeah.
Yeah. There's some midlife stuff showing up in that of like,
oh yeah.
Of like, yeah, like I've seen some things. I felt some things.
I've seen some shit, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so well then that leads right into the question of like, how did you get to that answer? Like, what's the shit that you've seen? Like, what's the journey been like?
Like, where do you want to start?
Where do you want to start is the question.
Where do I want to start? I mean, I think so often spirituality was Christianity for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I think that's good to name.
Yeah.
That like, this is where you're coming from. This is the foundation, the start line for you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that was in some ways a good first container.
Yeah.
for my compassion and empathy and unity and forgiveness and like generosity and all these words and things I felt.
Yeah.
That felt kind of like a pretty spacious container growing up for me. And I was thinking it isn't anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair.
And maybe I'm looking for a second container now, but I was thinking about it this morning actually. And I was like, I think therapy was my second container.
Yeah.
And there's something about, I don't know how 9 specific we're being versus
I want to hear
like
your
how much
story,
of this is, okay.
and then the 9-ness will make itself known. That's the thing is like, we don't need to talk about it. It'll talk about itself.
Okay. Yeah, like I think I've held on to containers too long and will kind of contort when I start to feel, oh, this feels a little tight. You know, it's like, well, because I'm not moving my hips.
Yeah.
So you got to move your hips a little over, you know. And then you got to like, you know, do this and this. And so there's this kind of contorting to kind of make it work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Over and over and over again until it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think I did that with Christianity for sure. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing that with therapy now.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious about that, but
yeah. Well, tell us more about therapy as the second container, because I think a lot of people have, at least a lot of people listening to this podcast have a very minimum cursory understanding of Christianity as the first container and why that might not last your whole life.
Yeah.
But I have a sense of what you might mean as therapy as the second container, but I'm really curious as to like, what does that mean for you? What did that look like? What does that look like for you? And is it getting a little tight, and in what ways? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah, that's good. So let's go back to the 2 tracks.
Okay, 2 tracks. Got them.
Right. So
like little skis.
When I went to college, University of Missouri.
Okay. Mizzou.
Mizzou Rock.
I'm a KU fan, so. Ouch.
You are on the right side of history.
Indeed.
So you are a free state. I can't.
Rock chalk, my friends.
Can't deny that. But yeah, so I really owned my Christian faith. Kind of my come to Jesus moment was 2 days before 9/11.
Oh, damn.
Like I had just showed up to the college campus. And then that happened. And then it was just like, okay, I want to do something in service. And so it's like pastor or counseling.
Yeah.
That was like a thought I had, which was quite progressive.
For the time.
Which is funny. This is like a side note, but I never once thought, oh, I think I need
my own therapy. Yeah, of course. Why would you think that?
Why would I think that?
Why?
Right? I was just like, I'm going to go be a great therapist.
Yeah.
And I did that through undergrad and never once had the thought.
Amazing.
So, right. So, but that part of me was like, I'm deepening into my faith. Right. And I'm owning it for the first time. But I think that was actually kind of me. There was some spaciousness there, but I was actually kind of actively avoiding something.
Yeah.
Right. But the deeper part of me that I think there's a deep wisdom in there chose therapy.
Absolutely.
And so I was actually like still going down this one track saying, no, this is what I really, really want.
Yeah.
Right. But then this other part of me is like, and I'm going to start this over here.
Yeah.
And this one's about answers and defending and this one's about exploring.
Yeah.
And embracing and accepting and being curious. And those felt congruent for a while.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they weren't at one point. Right?
Yeah.
But I think that deeper part of me knew something that I didn't want to know.
Yeah.
And I've relied more and more on unconscious kind of knowing.
Yeah.
More and more. So that was starting out in college, and I really tried to merge those but then I actually went and got some good therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
and started, I don't know, just more and more, it's like I'm receiving in parts of myself. Like what parts of my house, what rooms in my house are locked that I don't want to go into, or I won't take you up there.
Yeah.
Like, can I receive that in? I don't have to go in right away.
Yeah.
But I know it's there.
Yeah.
Or I can go in and look around or whatever it is, right? Like, I think that kind of spaciousness helped me begin to wake up to things I didn't want to wake up to.
Yeah.
And that feels like that's a part of that second container.
Yeah.
That had really helped me. I think there was like a lot of awareness that was kind of going in there. I think there was pain in it. There was probably a lot of shameful awareness.
Yeah.
So I knew a lot, but it didn't really do much.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, this idea of like painful awareness, I think it's so easy for that to like slip into shame and almost reinforce or shut the door, like shut and lock the door when you're trying to open it. In those situations, what helped you to keep the door open?
That's a good question. I think I would hear people that I didn't know I aligned with. Like whether it's a therapist, whether it's a therapist might say something like, well, that was an asshole move for them, or something. And you're like, I mean,
what?
Like I don't know what to do with that kind of openness, know, or yes. Or poetry, like just people who I'm like, I didn't think I aligned with this.
Yeah.
And it's aligning with something. It like something is settling,
like resonating with you.
And it's like, oh crap. Like, so like, I think those kinds of moments helped me keep the door open and say, this is like, and I think I've been so hurt in my past from people shutting doors and closets. And like, I don't want to live this way, but I just didn't have almost any examples within my heritage of that. So
yeah, it really feels like there's something really powerful here in like almost like you're unsure or like you don't trust yourself, and then having that kind of external resonance helps to give you enough space to like walk through that door, so keep the door open longer. That seems really like powerful and supportive.
It's a good word. Like it, especially back then, it wouldn't help me really hold my inner authority, but it helped that resonance enough to be like, keep going.
Yeah.
Right. So I still needed but I started looking for authors. I started looking for poetry.
Almost like crutches when you're learning to walk, right? That like, okay, something in here has been broken or disconnected, and it's like, it's not those sorts of things aren't the kind of final say or aren't the end of the road for your growth, but they're like a pivotal step in like getting this to resonate enough that you could hear it on your own.
Yeah, I did one triathlon.
Okay.
And I thought I could swim well, like, because we would go to the lake every.
I love this story already.
It's already. You don't know where it's going at all.
No, I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I love it. I'm like, okay, tell me more.
But I would go from like my skis or the inner tube to the boat without, any
Being winded.
Yeah. So I was like, I can swim.
Yeah.
And so I did this triathlon and I can't swim very well. And people are like, I have one speed. And then if I like stop, I just go vertical in the water. Right.
Okay.
And then I have to like doggy paddle to get back. But people are going on top of me and I'm like,
oh yeah.
Right. And so by like a quarter of the way in, I was gassed.
Yeah.
And I saw this big floating buoy and I like crossed everyone to get over there. Cause I was like,
oh shit.
I'm like in a oh shit moment. Like I'm going to drown. And it was just floating there. Like it didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And I saw like my life flash before my eyes. And then but I saw boats like along, if I could just get 50 more yards. And I barely got there.
Yeah.
But then the only way I made it was I would just swim to the next boat. Yeah. And then like rest and swim to the next boat and rest. And it feels like that. Like it felt like, oh, like I know me, like I know how to do this. Yeah. And it's like, no, the fuck you don't.
Like once you get in the water and you have to live it out. Yep. It's like, oh shit.
Yep. And I think I was literally just swimming from canoe to canoe for quite a while, in my adult life. But I also kind of like, you've talked about with Enneagram stuff, like instead of just like, oh, the unhealthy parts, it's like, you're like going down a hill and you're like holding on to specific branches, right? And instead of it being failure, it's like, this is your way of holding on. And I feel like that very much like, those are kind of beautiful.
I mean, I think your story really illustrates this super well, that like, just in general, when it comes to this kind of personal growth, had you not reached for those things, you would have drowned. Yeah. Right? Like you would have straight up died. Yeah. It's like, that's it.
Yeah. And no one would have noticed, which is a very nine thing too.
Somebody would, somebody eventually would have been like checking the like finish report and be like, where was Matt?
Yeah. Aaron would have noticed.
It's just like, oh, maybe he got caught up in the group. I don't know. And so it's value, like these steps are so important and they're only steps. Like they're not the destination themselves. Like, but without them, without these stop-offs, without these supports or crutches or whatever you want to call it, we're all screwed. Yeah. Right. Like you have really specific ones around like needing support in this resonance, but me as an 8, I have different crutches. I have different supports in order to do this growth. I think that story like encapsulates this idea really well. Like you need that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to not, hate myself for it or shame ourselves for it or whatever. But to see, it's the way to hold on and keep moving. And
so with therapy and like finding these kind of like inner resonances and that sort of thing, like what does that container look like in terms of like your experience of spirituality?
I remember I was at a psychoanalytic conference and this dude who was super dry, like he just reads like his notes, Yeah. But he's brilliant at the same time, and he before he started, he just had this like little quip. He said, at the beginning of treatment, we don't always like our patients. And everybody kind of like nervously like, no, I mean, right?
No, I love my patients.
And then he's like, but by the end we love them. And it just was like silent. Yeah. Right. And you're like, oh. And then he just went into his dry. Yeah. Whatever he was going to say. But that's like stuck with me because I think, I don't always align with everybody I see. I don't. I can be annoyed. I can like, they bring out all these different parts in me. And we're always co-creating something. We're reenacting something. And, but I get to eventually see them. And experience them in that kind of love. And that I just don't like, it's so beautiful. It's sometimes painful to get there. And all that. But that whole like Rumi, you're not a drop in the ocean.
And you are the entire ocean and drop.
Yeah. But it's like that. I love to experience people's depths. And whether it's leaning into creativity or vulnerability or something that we've been scared to do, like those kind of openings are so indicative for me of like what spirituality is about.
So you've set this, this quip from this, guy, whatever his job title is. We don't always like our clients at the beginning, but by the end, we love them. And there's something for you as a therapist that really like resonates with that deeply. And I'm wondering if that's also true on the receptive side of therapy for you. You kind of did a nice little bypass to other people's depths and
prove it.
So I'm curious, like, have you experienced the receptive side of that in therapy? And like, what has that piece been like for you?
I have in kind of different ways. But I think it's just this kind of unfolding, right? So like, like there's definitely things I could see in each time I've done therapy or done any kind of work. There's kind of that, some openings. But I'm always amazed at how guarded I am with myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome to the body triad.
Yeah. So it's just this, if I do come into something, I can forget it.
Yeah. Ooh.
Like forgetting is the best coping mechanism. It is the most ingenious coping mechanism.
I mean, it's hard to argue. Like, just I don't even remember. What were we talking about?
Yeah, it's like I don't have to lie to you. I don't have to, lie to myself. Like I'm literally, right? Yeah. It's like, it is the best way to protect.
Yeah.
But it's super hard to override.
Yeah.
So like, there's things that I know and then forget, and but I feel like going through kind of this middle passage, this midlife kind of stuff, the last probably 3 years, I've been able to experience depths that I hadn't let myself feel.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of sadness, and kind of wanting to, but there's so much love in it. Like, I think that's the thing. It's like, I'm starting to see where we're all circling pain.
Yeah.
And there's so much love in it.
Yeah.
Like, there's so much love in it.
Yeah.
And it's not theoretical to me anymore, or,
yeah,
or oughts and shoulds. It's like, I have a deep knowing, that is like mine.
Yeah.
And that's the empowering part that like comes online, I think, especially for me as a 9, like, like when I know it,
it's real.
It's real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I mean, with this kind of like unfolding and this touching in on like things like grief and sadness, how it's so easy to forget. And for you as a 9, it's so easy to forget. And this is a lot of stuff that is probably ripe for forgetfulness. How do you stay in it? Like, how do you stay with grief? How do you, and like, it's almost, I'm getting this sense that like, it's almost like staying with the grief is opening to a spiritual experience, but maybe the grief itself is a spiritual experience. Like, what is it for you? How is this, what is the shape of this for you?
Well, that's so much of this was intellectualized, right? Early. So like, I have this like wealth of information of like beautiful writers, and, right? And so like, I know sorrow is connected to joy.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
You know,
I know it up here.
I know, I've read Khalil Gibran. I've like,
I know the prophet. It's fine.
Yeah. It's like, and I, once again, there's a wisdom to why I was drawn to all that.
Yeah.
You know, and
absolutely
dipping my toes in the water and all that stuff. But all of that becomes more animated when I'm in it. And, you know, even once again, different writers like David White talked about the middle passage. Like, it's having an adult to adult relationship to life.
Yeah.
And looking reality in the eyes. And it's like, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And say, I'm going to be able to look at this now. And so all this stuff is like, it's stuff I know.
Yeah.
But I just, let me think about it. I don't want to just give you an answer to answer it.
Yeah. No, I'm here for the space.
Can you say more about this? Because I think like
I think you're answering it well, that like there was a way in which you had to kind of like intellectualize it or understand it.
Yeah.
In order to make space for the experience. And I guess my question is more around what was it like for you to experience it?
It's almost always crying.
Okay. Cool. Great.
And it's weird. Like when I get into that space, the tears it almost feels the same every time. Like they feel warm, and most of the time I'm laying down.
Okay.
And they just kind of run, and they feel warm.
Yeah.
And clean. And I'm either have this like really big smile on my face you can't get off, or a grimace that you can't get off.
Okay.
I mean, it's either one. And there's typically some sobbing. Like, I mean, it's like old built up stuff.
Yeah.
In it.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I've always wanted a spaciousness.
Yeah.
To like think and write, and but I never really had it filled with any kind of like loving presence.
Yeah.
And I think when I started to fill it with loving presence, there was just this collapse of all of this guardedness and constriction.
Yeah.
And like I started to feel like where I was never supported, like or never invited into like a different kind of rhythm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, it's very embodied.
Yeah.
Getting really connected to my body, and really talking to my inner child or children.
Yeah.
Right. Like like not in this like heady way. Like I know all of that shit.
Yeah.
And I've helped people for years and years do that.
Yeah.
And I'm just now doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think it's so funny to hear you talk about the 2 tracks and like, especially in the terms of like, I'm going to go be a good therapist.
Yeah.
And never really clicking with like, oh, I should experience therapy. And there's something about, I think anytime we commit to our work, we don't know what we're committing to. You know, like like we don't actually have any fucking clue whatsoever. Like it is, I feel like I've known about Enneagram work for like a decade now. And like every day I'm like, Jesus Christ, why did I sign up for this? But I did, like almost knowingly, right? But then the experience of it is just bonkers different. And I think there is something about when we commit to our work, there's a way in which like our jobs, right? Our career, like you're a therapist as a job, like that's what pays your bills, right? Like there is something about that becomes this really powerful vehicle for our, like what I would call capital W work. You know, like I feel very similarly about coaching and yoga therapy is like, yeah, I can intellectualize and I can, you know, tell you X, Y, and Z, but none of it actually works unless I'm in process, like with it. And there's something really profound, I think for all body types, but for 9s especially, around like, you are deserving of the process and the healing just as much as anyone else. And it's like, it's almost like a bait and switch. Like you would never do it for yourself if you didn't need to do it for your clients. Like the same thing for me. Like I would never do it for myself if I didn't need it for my clients. And now I'm learning how to want it for myself.
Yeah.
To feel like I deserve it for myself. And that's such a, man, it's new and uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, oh, the hell.
Yeah. Cause like so many people come in to my office, like hanging on to their coping mechanisms, right? Like they're not really working.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is like getting them in the door is, I don't want to be doing this to my partner. I don't want to be doing this to my kids anymore. Like I don't want this for them. And that gets them in. Yeah. But that's still not the work.
Yeah.
Like, right. And
it's like, it's important, but that's almost symptomatic.
Yep.
You know, and the real work, like if we just focus on that, you could see some growth there, but it's like, it's always going to kind of come back in another way unless we get to the root of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's pretty wonderful. Like I think that's where I'm curious about it being. A few years ago, I was bored and exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and as a therapist, and and really, and I think about it is when I'm a therapist now. It's like a good hiding place in some ways, right? It's like your last hiding place.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you realize, oh, like we haven't gone as far as we need to because I haven't received in some part of myself.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're asking me to look at something in me. You're not asking me to look at something in you.
Yeah.
You're asking, right. It's like, and that's where it has to be a 2-person psychology. It's like, every single person I see is going to be taking some unhealed, unconscious part of me and says, please play with me here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Like, let's look at this.
And I'm like, no, I'm an objective. What are you talking? I'm a professional. But you know, it's like over and over, you know, you just move through that. And it's like, my mentor would say, like, if you're bored and you're exhausted in this work, you're not going in far enough. You're not going deep enough. And that's been a process for me that has proven to be enlivening, you know, and enriching for me and healing. Like I've done a lot of my healing. So it's interesting. Like especially most people in the helping profession have thought throughout COVID to like, maybe I'm done.
Yeah.
So it's some of that's not like unique to me, but yeah, it's like an interesting space of like, is there actually space or preference, you know, that I still have here, you know?
Yeah.
And I think I'm using my space a little bit more and laying out and, you know, like I can, and so I'm not having to
That's nice.
Do that as much.
Yeah. So what are the things, like, what are the practices that have supported you on this journey?
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about therapy as a practice and as a container for this kind of thing, both in receiving therapy and in giving therapy. But like, what outside of that kind of container, what are the things that have been supportive to you in this like spiritual journey, if we want to call it that? Man, that sounds so like grandiose and stupid.
Yeah. Traveling alone.
Okay. Traveling alone.
Yeah. Cause I got a wife and kids. Like I don't do that very often.
Yeah.
But with work and some, you know, like retreats and stuff, I was out in Big Sur a couple weekends ago and then Venice Beach. And, especially in my 9-ness, like, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Where do I want to eat?
Yeah.
Where am I going to get coffee? Like,
so deeply out of routine, like you don't even have the like routine relational pieces if you're traveling alone.
And I'm not pleasing 3 other people.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like, I'm in a room by myself.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want?
Yeah.
And to me, you know, I think it was Meister Eckhart. I've been trying to work through this. He says there is no spiritual journey. He just calls it rhythm. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but there is something about like finding my own rhythms, you know? And so anytime I go out to California, like Pacific Ocean just like cracks my rib cage open and exposes my heart. And I don't know what to do with all of that, but it does. And so it's like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go to these places. I'm going to do this. And it's a alignment. Like I'm just thinking about what do I want?
Yeah.
And it to not be, like I used to like be the person that would spend 30 minutes in the beer aisle. Just like,
which one?
You know,
like, I don't know what I want.
You know? But I would be like, and then I would say, okay, I give myself 5 minutes. So I give myself 1 minute. Right. But all of that, even though it was playful, it was very pressurized. Right. It was kind of like, get your fucking shit together. Like, like, come on, like, this is ridiculous. Like it had that energy to it. That wasn't helpful. Right.
Yeah. It almost feels, like the indecision is almost compulsory. Like that whole feeling of like, get your shit together. Why are you doing this? Like, I feel that in my own life about very different things, but I've learned to kind of give it that name of compulsion. And that has been super helpful for me, that like, okay, there is something about this that I can't not do right now. And like it's so interesting to see it from a 9 perspective, where it's like the compulsion is almost not doing. The compulsion is not making a decision. The compulsion is not moving forward. Yeah, I really resonate with that. Like,
that's interesting.
Get your shit together. Come on, why are you doing this? But it's almost like it's almost a not doing.
Yeah.
But like you don't have any room to do in those moments.
Yeah. Or the doing is. Yeah, because it's a not doing. It is right, but the doing is almost. Think about it a little bit more. Go back. Think about like there's so much to do in the not doing.
Yeah.
Right. But I think normally when I can travel alone, I have that open space where I'm not like poking myself with a hot iron, you know?
Yeah.
And that's been helpful to me.
Yeah.
And I think differentiating fearful decisions from decisions leaning into fear.
Ooh, say more.
So I've been into like some Jungian, right? And James Hollis, who wrote a really great book called The Middle Passage about midlife. He paraphrases Jung, and he says, it's kind of a big statement at the beginning, but he says, the spirit of evil.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
The spirit of evil is fear that negates your life force. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And that the only thing that will deliver you from fear is boldness.
I mean, I'm on board.
And that when you don't take that risk, you violate the meaning of your life.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. That's the stuff I'm into. So,
all right, Nines. I know we just lost you, but please take a moment, take a few breaths, and we're going to tune back in.
Nice. Yeah. But I'm like, so to me, so much, like I'm always fending off that like 6, like fear, like I can go there in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I say yes to things I need to say no to. I say no to things I want to say yes to.
Mm-hmm.
And you do those so many laps around that track.
Yeah.
Like it's just, you're tired of it.
Yeah.
And particularly when you start to see the beauty that's in front of me and the preoccupation that takes me away from it and all of that, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this sense of like really, like, where am I making a lot of decisions in fear, which is really the avoidance of fear.
Yeah.
And therefore like purpose, or can I play with and lean into fear?
And maybe just to clarify the terms of like, I like the symmetry of like out of fear or into fear.
Yep.
But I think maybe for listeners, like there's something about like making a decision out of fear or making a decision that might lead, like a decision to avoid discomfort or a decision to intentionally engage with like a discomfort or like, right, which is kind of what fear is, right? That it's something that like we feel like we don't have space for, or something that feels threatening, or something that causes that like internal, like I call it sphincter tightening.
Oh yeah.
There's like, oh God,
is this something really coming up?
Yeah, right. Like, but like you can make decisions that avoid those things, or you can make decisions that lead you into those things. And I don't think it's always across the board the right call to lean into those things. Like sometimes we straight up don't have capacity, or we don't have we don't have the structures we need, or we don't have the support we need to do that and do it well. Like sometimes we got to go with our type because it's going to keep us safe, and it's going to, right. Sometimes we got to swim to that boat or that buoy and just hold off and let the rest of the swimmers go past.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there is something really like, I don't know, to the quote you shared, like very life affirming in leaning into those decisions that kind of make you go, oh, ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like, maybe an example is, like I love the ocean, and, a few summers ago, I'll just get a cup of coffee and I'll go down, and I would just watch the surfers.
Yeah.
And it's super relaxing. I like doing it.
Yeah.
And I was marveling at them. I was like, I think one of the things I like about surfers so much is like they play with sharks. Like they play in the same water as sharks, and they're just hanging out.
Yeah.
Like they're just wading in the water, like talking. And I'm like, how are you doing this? Like
you're like, ugh.
And I like deeply want to, like, whether it's surf or like, I love playing out in the waves. But then that fear overtakes me.
Yeah.
And so, the next year I had a friend had given me this really beautiful, long quote from Rumi about, which was totally for me. Like, like you walk the water's edge, you're keeping up your robe, trying to keep it dry, and you need to like dive in naked, like dive in 1,000 times deeper than you feel like you need to, like shiver in the cold of this new love. Like you're just like beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like out there, and I'm like, I'm gonna take this literally. This might be too TMI, but I was like, went to Black's Beach, in San Diego, clothing option beach.
Perfect, love it.
I got naked.
Yeah.
And I went into the water, and when I get up to about here in the water, I start to kind of be like, I'm not in like my environment anymore. Like this is
I'm in water.
I'm in great white territory now. Yeah. Right. And then I always pull back. And so I was like, I'm just going to go out 5 feet beyond that. And then I'm going to dive down 2 or 3 feet deeper than I normally would. Yeah. And it scared the crap out of me. Yeah. You know? But it was one of these things. I can like
feel it now, and you telling it, I'm like, ooh,
you're
like my heart rate's like picking up, like I'm feeling it. Like,
And there's no lifeguards there, right? There was no one else there. It was just like, like who knows what will, once again, Matt goes underwater and maybe
maybe comes up, maybe doesn't.
There's some themes that are showing up here, but it's like, but it was one of those things of like, I have the space and the internal resource to do this right now. And and I don't know what it was for, but I know that this is good. And I was a giddy little boy, like in the water, like I was like having so much fun. But it was the next year that I went surfing with my son. I'm gonna get a little but it was just like that's what I wanted, and I didn't know I wanted it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, like I was like I wanted to surf with my son,
and like you couldn't access that space of like play and joy without first facing this fear in the water. Like that is it. That is what this work is about. Is like, can you find the space? Can you develop the capacity to, 5 feet, right? Dunk your head under, splash around. Like, can you find the space to make that happen and work with that fear so that you can have this like intensely like joyful moment with your son doing this thing that like you've marveled at for years. Like, fuck yeah. Like, and it's beautiful because it's this like, just like elegant and precise metaphor, but it's not a metaphor. It is no, do it, live it, embody it. It is a real
Make it literal
thing. Like it's the best metaphors are also exactly literal. They are, they work beautifully as a metaphor, but when they're lived, something totally new happens. Like that is it. That is the shit right there.
Yeah. I love it.
Thank you for sharing. That is, the fear, the like, and then the moment of like, oh my God, like, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I think too, you know, so much of parenting for me has been like, right? Like you're trying to figure it out while you go, right? And so it's like, I could see where I could pass down and have passed down like my fear to my kids inadvertently, right? Because how do you get in the water if I'm scared to death by a certain
kids will
point?
never go past
like
where you go.
You can't fake that. You can't be like, no, I mean,
it's fun.
You want to go out there? You go. Well, like, let me go out with you real fast. You know, like you can't fake that, right? And you're just white knuckling, like to not try to like pass this stuff down. Yeah, you know, and I needed to be able to do those things, and I didn't always know what it was for, but and all that's deeply spiritual to me, right? Like, like even 100%. That idea of the life force being negated by fear. It's like, that is our spirit. Being confined by
imagination.
You know, a lot of things.
Yeah. Matt, thank you so much for, sharing that story, but everything that you've shared so far. Where can people find you and your work and what you do in the world?
Yes. I would private practice here in Austin, so Inman Psychotherapy. And I'm actually going to be making a second inefficiency. Yeah. I think it's going to be a book, or journal. It was a magazine.
Thrills me. This thrills me in my deepest heart of hearts.
Oh, that's
I'm
good.
so excited.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's going to be this year. It's going to be, I'm going to be exploring play, particularly like in adulthood.
Yeah.
And sharing a lot of people's stories of, that hopefully, aren't just some of it's going to go light. It's going to go deep. It's going to be a lot of things.
Everything in between.
But that's going to be this year.
You heard it here first, folks. Inefficiencies coming back. For people who don't know, Matt hosted a podcast for a long time, so several years, called Inefficiency, and has put out a magazine. And the entire concept is fucking beautiful and brilliant, and you should be very excited if you aren't already. So get very, very stoked about this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. So theinefficiency.com will have like something if you wanted to put your email in.
Yeah.
We won't spam you, but it's just to kind of do pre-orders.
I don't know that nines know how to spam.
Yeah. It's deeply.
You might get one email in the next 6 months, maybe.
That was spam.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll do some pre-orders and stuff when it gets closer. But
that's super exciting.
Yeah.
Sweet. Again, thank you so much for sharing your time and your experience and your wisdom with us. This was absolutely wonderful. If you are watching, be sure to drop a comment down below. We'll get some conversation going. If you're a 9, I want to hear about your experience. If you got 9s in your lives, that sort of stuff. The standard like, share, comment, subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, don't forget to leave a rating and a review. And go check out Matt and theinefficiency.com. We've got all the info down in the show notes. And we'll see you all in the next one.